You're live.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to our live stream where we're going to be going through the budget by the Right Honourable Rachel Reeves, as leaked by the OBR. And I'm going to be coming to this fine gentleman in just a second. But just to kind of set you the scene of what's going on, we've got a government that is teetering on the brink with a lot of pressure politically on the government. From Nigel Farage, who we know has been a racist boy back at school as of the last few days.
Not intentionally.
Not intentionally.
Or hurtfully.
No, he's not. He's not a hurtful racist. He's just an accidental racist. Yeah, a nice racist. We're dealing with a very stagnant and moribund economy. Quite proud of that word. And we're back in a corner from a Labour Party perspective because they've made these campaign promises, and they've also taxed us quite aggressively in the last budget as well, right? So this is a key budget, ladies and gentlemen, where we need to get the economy back on track, right? We need to basically repair some of the damage reputationally that this government has taken over the last few years. And joining us, we have none other than the wonderful Salman Anwar, who is a tax specialist. He is a former HMRC investigator.
Keyword
former.
Yeah.
And he knows where all of the skeletons are buried and helps you now possibly, maybe not cover over the skeletons, but at least navigate
Take
through.
them out and give them a proper burial.
Exactly. Take them out, give them a proper burial. And you've worked at Mazars, you've worked at BDO, and you're now flying the flag of independence, and you've got your own company that does tax and accountancy advisory. Is that right?
Yeah. So that's adult tax or ADL tax, depending on how I'm trying to say it at the time. But yeah, alhamdulillah.
Fantastic. Okay, so we've had a whole bunch of announcements that's come out of this budget and the Treasury, and we're going to go through a whole bunch of these over the next 45 minutes or so. And we've had, this particular budget has had so many leaks. It's had more leaks than a dodgy plumber leaves behind him. From even until half an hour before the budget, the entire budget was leaked, right?
And the skeptical, maybe rightly, will be saying that was the government testing the waters on various things.
Yeah, it's true. It's kind of how they do it, isn't it? They always, they give you these random leaks from about a month out just to see how everyone will react, and then they will navigate through that. What do you think that is the way that we should be setting budgets and policies?
I don't think so. I think I was listening to the budget earlier, and even the deputy speaker kind of took the government to task about this kind of pattern that we've had over the last, I don't know how many years, probably the last decade now, where the government of the day has been leaking and releasing certain things, press briefing and emergency press briefing, and we had Rachel Reeves do that a few weeks ago. So I don't think it's good for the economy, really. I think it's just too much speculation, personally. I'm not an expert in economy, but I think it can't be good when you're kind of constantly getting speculation.
And to me, it sounds like what the Labour government unfortunately has been since the start, which is they're nice people, but it feels like they're a little bit aimless. They don't actually have a clear agenda, and they're trying to just people please. And so they test it out and they see, what's the mood music like? And then let's go with, where there isn't as much anger. But that isn't how you set a coherent economic policy, to my mind.
I'd agree. I think, Ibrahim, you hear loads of things, loads of analysis in the way that Labour have been approaching things, Keir Starmer and his top team. And the word or the phrase that comes to my mind is kind of a lack of authority and direction at times.
Yeah.
Like, you're not feeling it, like they don't know how to govern. They haven't been in government before. And they're learning on the job, and they don't really have anyone around them to be, leading.
Yeah.
Really.
They need to go to a local masjid and talk to Ustaji, right? That every masjid has an Ustaji, normally with a stick. I think those days are probably out of, they're no longer.
Doesn't exist.
Yeah, that doesn't happen anymore. But Ustaji with a stick was the kind of, that's the kind of person you want to be striking as a prime minister, not what we've got at the moment. Yeah. But Salman, I wanted to give you a few highlights, and then I want to give you the stage to set out what because I know you've been poring over it and you've been really getting into the weeds of it. So I want to hear from you as well. But this budget raises taxes by £26 billion in 2030. It's going to be a budget that brings all-time taxes to a high of 38% of our GDP. So that means that I think 1 in every £10 that the government spends is actually going to be spent on interest, right, to pay off that. And the background is last year, the budget put up £40 billion worth of taxes. So this year we put up another 26 billion. And the market's response has been interesting. So the markets, when there was a leak, they actually, they reacted positively because the gilts market went down a bit. So borrowing got a bit cheaper for the government, but then it's gone back up again. So it's basically the same. So the markets haven't really responded. They've kind of sucked it up, I guess. So those are the headlines. What do you make of it?
I think it's a very jam-packed budget from the looks of things. I mean, there's still a lot to digest. A lot of the announcements are headline announcements, but yeah, I mean, I think, as you said, it takes us to the highest post-war tax take in proportion to GDP, which is quite astonishing, really, especially when you put into context how many tax rises we got the last time round. So I think it's a very interesting budget. It's raising taxes across a fair few areas. I mean, the government promised in their manifesto, or the Labour Party did at the time, that they were going to raise taxes on working people, but they've raised it on pretty much everybody else. And you could look at the pension salary sacrifice, which I'm sure we'll come on to. That is on working people. So I think this is a budget that's raising taxes. Is it going to help the economy get back on track and grow? I'm not entirely sure about that.
So Salman, what are the people going to be feeling on the streets? So when it comes to wages, benefits, pensions, what are the big tax changes that everyone is going to be concerned about?
Yeah, I mean, the top three that everyone's kind of probably hearing about already are and I'm going to actually start in, I think, the order that they're going to have probably the biggest impact, not necessarily tax take wise, but you've got the increase on income tax rates on dividends, property income, and saving. They all go up by 2%. So dividend goes from 8.75 to 10.75 at the basic rate, and then 33% on the higher rate, and more, 35%, sorry. And then your property income, so landlords are going to be paying 22% on basic rate and 42% on the higher, and 47% on the additional. So that's the biggest measure. I think people are gonna feel that. I think then the second one is around the pension salary sacrifice. So you've got you're able to take off your gross pay in agreement with your employer and put that into your pension, and you not only get income tax relief on that, you would currently getting national insurance relief. So you weren't paying employee national insurance, and the employer wasn't paying any national insurance. Now, government's put a £2,000 cap on that. I believe that's coming in from the next tax year, April 26. Whatever it's coming in from, what that means is that both employees and employers are now going to be paying national insurance contributions on pension contributions. So, coupled with the changes to national insurance for employers in the last budget, this is going to really increase cost, and it's going to mean that people will take home slightly less.
Because this is all going to, this is a lot of the stuff that you see in your pay slip, right? The boring stuff that people don't really read, but a lot of this is going to get taken out. So the net income that you take home is going to go down as a result, most likely.
Yeah. So you're going to be paying employee national insurance. So even though you're putting X amount into your pension, your net pay will go down as a direct result of this change, and employers' costs are going to increase now because they're going to have to pay national insurance. The income tax relief is still income tax relief, that still exists. So that's still going to be in existence. It's also going to mean more complexity when it comes to reporting payroll, stuff like that. So that's going to need to be changed.
So the income tax thresholds, that's the big one that everyone seems to think about, right? So they've not changed the income tax itself.
Yeah. So the third headline is the income freeze on the income tax thresholds continuing up until the early part of the next decade for now, so 2030-31 tax year. Now, people might not directly see this in terms of the take-home pay, but what it means is when you take inflation into account, they will end up paying more tax overall. And this is one of the, in terms of tax takes, this is the biggest measure.
Stealth
taxes. Fiscal drag is what people may have heard of, and it is a stealth tax, so people don't see it on a year-to-year basis. But what's happening is, because of inflation and pay increases, more people are ending up in the higher tax brackets because pays continue to go up, but these thresholds are not changing, so they are in real terms paying more tax.
Interesting. So this is it's quite a cunning way of basically raising the tax burden on particularly those whose income is rising. So the good ones, right? The good ones whose pay is going up, they're the ones who are inadvertently being hit by this, or actually very, very advertently, very intentionally being hit by this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this was obviously this was a measure that was brought in by the Conservatives a few years ago now, and I think Labour were intending to not keep it in place, but again, I think it's the signs of the times now that they are having to keep these measures in place, or they're choosing to. And when you couple this in with the pension salary sacrifice changes, it could really impact the sort of people into the higher tax brackets and so on, because you are now creeping into people if they don't want to put into. So one of the ways people stop hitting the £100,000 sort of cliff edge is by putting more into the pensions. Now they might rethink that because they're now having to pay a bit more tax on it. It's national insurance, but still type of tax. So that's gonna need careful thinking by people. Now they're gonna have to revisit that possibly. Because as you'll know, Ibrahim, and the viewers may know, that cliff edge means you start to lose your personal allowance, you start to lose access to childcare support and things like that. So it can be a real big hit. Across that kind of piece, it's like a 60% plus marginal rate of tax.
Just because for you viewers who are not really familiar with this, when you go from 99,000 to 100,000 or wherever it's the
100,000 and a pound and above.
So above that, you start losing your personal allowance, which is the tax-free bit, right? So effectively, between 100,000 and 120,000-ish, 124,000, that portion of your income, you basically get taxed at 60%. So it's not really worth it.
Absolutely. So what's happening is every £2 of increase in income, you lose £1 of personal allowance. So that £1 is now being taxed at 20%. So while you're being taxed at 40% for that income anyway, that reduction means there's another 20%. When you look at the marginal rates, like 67%, close to 70%.
Wow. So that's all the doom and gloom, Salman, but you need to give us some good news as well, right? So we've got state pension, which has increased by 4.5%. We've had the national living wage increases. So what's that all about?
So people on national, let's start with the state pension. So that will go up. So people will get more in their state pension. The other kind of linked change to that is they've announced, they've not announced the details, but in terms of people who get an increase in pension and they end up in a tax-paying position, they're going to simplify how that is taxed and how that is. So that's a bit of both sides of that is good news. And then the national minimum wage, or the national living wage, as it's more commonly known now, that's going up as well. Now, for employers, that's obviously, for workers, that's a good thing. For employers and businesses, that's a double-edged sword, because not only are their costs going up directly in paying those people on minimum wage, but also that increase then means increase in employers' national insurance and so on.
So this is an interesting one, isn't it? Because when they put up minimum wage, they don't have to pay for it. So when they put up the taxes, they get paid the receipts from it. But minimum wage, they just said you guys have to pay more.
You pay more. And if you think about it, when that happens, it's also an increase in the tax take, because indirectly, directly, you're going to bring more tax in. I know we're talking a small increase. I think it's 3% overall, right? But if you think about it, 3% of that increase means more tax on that 3% overall across the whole economy.
And what do you think about the fairness of this, both of these things? Because let me give you my take on this. My take as an employer, and in the financial institutions, we obviously pay well above the minimum wage, but when it comes to a lot of the other businesses that we might invest into, particularly pharmacy and other high street businesses, there are people who are at the living wage. And so when you raise that amount, that actually, what ends up happening, and employers told the government this was going to happen, is that you have freezes in hiring, or you might not necessarily replace people who end up leaving, and you actually stop investing as much into the business as a result. So I feel like it's a nice one to kind of play to the audience, play to the crowds, but actually the people who are really going to get this country out of a mess, I think, are the businesses, particularly the small businesses, the entrepreneurs. And these kind of policies, they screw them over, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think, look, it's that economic engine of the country that's going to drive it forward, and that's business, right? That's what's creating employment and so on. and absolutely, I think I agree with you. It is difficult as it will be for any business, especially those who employ people on the minimum on the living wage. So yeah, I think it's absolutely going to be. It is a case of give with one hand and take with the other.
And the same with the pensions, because so the pensions have gone up by 4.5%. But I was looking into this, and these days, it's about justice and fairness, because the working population ultimately gets taxed, and it looks after, at some level, the elderly through things like the state pension. And before, particularly around the wartime, when this all came in, we had 5 working people for every pensioner. These days, we have more like 2.5 people for every pensioner. And so the burden on those who are working to look after this increasingly aging population, and by the way, that's the number's going to go even further down, right? I feel like it's unsustainable, and we've got this like triple lock where they decide the pension based on is it the highest or the lower?
I believe it's the highest.
The highest of 3 different things, and so the pension basically ends up always going up. And it's one of those golden calves or something where you can't sacrifice it because all of the elderly vote. But the reality is we are creating an increasingly unfair system that is unsustainable with an aging population. And it feels like this is a nice thing. We've put the state pension up a little bit, but we don't think about the implications of it, which are deeply worrying for the country.
100%. I think if you think what you said earlier, right? It's playing to the gallery, it's playing to the audience. Look, it's a difficult subject. Clearly, as a society, it's I believe we should look after our elderly and so on. Obviously, as Muslim, that's extremely important. But as a state system, it's a massively creaking system now. It's just. Like you said, it's going to get to a breaking point if it's not already. It's unsustainable in its current form. I think I was listening to some analysis of it on the radio the other day, of something like it's one of the biggest expenses from the governmental spending each year, into 100 and something billion is spent on state pension. It's second only to things like the NHS and whatnot.
Wow.
So it's a huge cost to the country. Now, obviously, it needs to exist in some form, and it needs to be funded in some form. How that happens, it clearly needs revisiting, because look, the rate of population growth is going down, and we're living longer, so people are going to have to work longer. We then get into the subject of letting more people come into the country and working and stuff like that. So at the current rate, it's unsustainable, even before you look at things like whether the people in the country are willing to do X, Y, and Z. You start having to look at, we need more people to do more work for just to pay for things like this.
So, and that brings me on to the next thing that we've introduced, which is to some extent, let's be honest, Salman, good for Muslims, which is limiting the households on universal or child tax credit from a third of subsequent child is going to be scrapped from April. So this whole hoo-ha, it only lasted for a year, and now they've basically scrapped it.
So it's the child benefit cap. So it's the 2 child benefit cap it's actually been around for a lot longer, Ibrahim. I think it was something introduced by the last set of governments. The
Oh yeah, but they didn't change it. They continued
so they continued it. So what Labour have done is initially they increased the threshold at which you start to lose the child benefit, which was set at 50,000 before for however long. So they increased that considerably, and now what they've done is that before you could only claim child benefit for two kids maximum, no matter what your circumstances were. They removed that. It's going to cost a lot of money, but it's going to be good for people with more than 2 kids.
Yeah,
they're going to get a bit more help.
So, and of course, that is, I think, good for Muslims on average because we tend to have more kids. At the same time, the OBR is forecasting that the welfare spending will rise by 73.2 billion. So it will rise in total to about 406 billion. And I'm honestly just scratching my head a bit, because I just think about the incentives that we are creating in our society, and this entire budget is basically attacking where money is being made, businesses and relatively affluent workers. That's kind of where it's going after, and it's increasing the places where there's it's the black hole, as it were, the drag. The state pension is increased that. The the welfare budget, it's increased that. NHS, it's increased that. So these are the big items that actually are causing there to be a massive deficit, and it's increased all of that. And the people that are going to get us out of this mess, it's put the burden on those guys even more.
It does seem like that way. I think that's a very fair summary, Ibrahim. I think there's a lot of these measures are targeted at supposedly those people with money, but those are the people who are going to be putting that money back into the economy, you would have thought. But what the government's doing is taking more of it in taxes.
Yeah. Okay, so if we move on now, I want to talk a little bit about your speciality, which is good old HMRC. So they've actually been given a whole bunch more resources at this point. And so what's going on there, and who are they going to be going after?
So there's a raft of points mentioned in the budget documents that were released just after Rachel Reeves sat down, and it's all about closing the tax gap. So that's the difference between the tax collected and the theoretical tax that should be collected, and that sits in the billions. And what's been happening recently, based on, again, people may want to take this with a pinch of salt. I mean, obviously there's great statisticians and people who do financial modeling who do work on this in the Treasury and HMRC, but more and more of that gap is now attributable to small businesses. So there's a raft of powers, consultations, measures that have been announced that are tackling that. So I'll just mention a few of them. So things like there's tightening of the construction industry scheme, how businesses who operate within that have to withhold tax and pay over to HMRC. HMRC is going to be given more money to recruit more criminal investigators within its fraud investigation directorate, and they're going to be specifically set up to target fraud within the sort of small business, high street kind of segment. HMRC is going to be paying more reward for people who dob others in it.
Interesting.
So the figure I've got on my screen is where there's more than 1.5 million pounds of tax recovered. HMRC will pay 30% of that. So
I've got one. I'm going to dob them in it as well. There's a takeaway that runs. I think it's like Vegan Donna, and it's in Ilford.
Okay.
And no one goes there.
Yeah.
And every 9 months or so, it changes, and it changes to something else, which is equally absurd.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, halal salad or something like that. And no one goes there. And it's obviously some kind of tax ruse.
Yeah, so get that reported. You
I
might
know,
be
might be
might be a
quizzing.
nice little income stream.
I know, could be a good income
Yeah,
stream.
yeah. Not
Interesting.
necessarily passive and recurring, but
I
30%
mean,
of 1.5 million is not to be sniffed at.
it's true. Yeah, very true. Okay, so they're doing that, and then you. So Salman, you mentioned something called loan charge review outcomes.
Yes.
What's that all about?
So this is a this is a long running saga for those in sort of the contracting industry, and then in the tax and accounting world will be more aware of it. So historically, there have been all sorts of marketed tax avoidance schemes and other types of non-marketed schemes, which have basically said to people, you can take home more money, especially contractors, and in the past, it did apply to businesses. Some people may remember that Rangers Football Club went under and resurrected itself from the ashes. That was a result of a similar type of scheme. So that long-running saga resulted in HMRC bringing in what was called the loan charge in 2019. Now it was very, very controversial. What it did was it had a massively retrospective tax impact in that it targeted everyone who'd been involved, and as at 5th of April 2019, hit them with a big charge. There've been several reviews into that. I believe this is the third review. So that's been concluded and now released as part of the budget, and the government's released its kind of response to it. And it all seems very positive for anybody impacted by it. There's about 9 recommendations, and government's not just accepted them, it's going beyond them. 1 or 2 of them look like they'll even be writing off some liabilities. So if there's anybody who's impacted by that, there should be a relief. I mean, there's been unfortunately and very sadly, people have taken their life on the back of this kind of hitting them. So it's been very, very damaging across the board. Obviously, details remain to be kind of looked at, but it's a positive step in that field.
Fantastic. And so, what was the thing that you were mentioning about self-employed people, and the way that I think that was the dividends, wasn't it?
Dividends, yeah. So the dividend tax obviously means that those who are kind of running their own businesses will be impacted, not only those investing into companies. But one of the other things we did talk about earlier was changes to how business owners might be looking to dispose of their business. There's been this employee ownership trust avenue available to businesses to exit, owners to exit by effectively
to their own employees.
It's putting it into a trust for the benefit of their own employees who would eventually buy it out, and they'd get paid over time. And up to now, that was 100%. So all of the gain, 10 million gain, 5 million gain, whatever was covered by relief at that moment in time, and then there were charges later down the line. Governments reduced that to 50% because of how much it's now costing, because they're not bringing in their tax, and abuse of that as well.
Right. So there is now some more good news, ladies and gentlemen, which is that we have given, the government has cut a whole bunch of green levies, and that is going to mean a net roughly £150 energy bill cut per annum for households, which I guess is a good thing. And then we are now going to be moving on to one of my favorite topics, which is investments. So the cash ISA has been limited. And by the way, folks, before we carry on, if you've got questions, please do put it into the live stream chat, and we will be turning to them in the next few minutes. But cash ISAs, this is bank accounts that offer savings accounts there, right? They previously were up to £20,000 a year, tax-free, that you could earn that in interest, or if you went with an Islamic bank, you could earn that in the profit rate. That's now been limited to £12,000 for under 65s. Talk to us, Salman. What's this all about?
So I hadn't spotted the under 65s bit, so I'm not sure whether that's a differential between the two.
I don't know. Let me check, because this is my notes. But you crack on. I'll do some digging.
So it's not. So if you've got your stocks and shares ISAs or the
under 65
versions and stuff like that, then those are fine. It's just if you put actual cash into an account that pays you interest or an alternative return on it, that's reduced to 12K. So you can't put as much in it. So it's causing, well, I suppose they want you to invest more of it into stocks and shares, and and the theory behind that is that comes back into the economy in one way or the other.
So this is where I feel like Rachel Reeves is a well-meaning but rather inept individual, because sure, it's true that if you reduce the cash ISA, that's going to push more people towards the stocks and shares ISA or other types of ISAs. But those ISAs, let's be honest, the majority of those are going to end up in the US stock market, because that's where they end up. So what we've effectively done is we've taken some money out from the British banking system and given it to the US economy or the US banking system, which to me seems like, it was a great move to get that out from the banking system where it wasn't doing very much, but then you could have done so much more with it than ending it in the pockets of Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos.
But that's what you get with politicians, right? They're coming at it with this, how is this going to be received publicly, and not necessarily understanding the underlying facts and how things work, really, unfortunately.
Yeah. And this is my other pet peeve that no one seems to really talk about, but the FSCS protections. The banking system is, like it or not, it's one of the biggest rackets that we've got in our modern economy.
Creates its own money, right?
Right. It creates its own money, and we give our money to it, and it's essentially loaning that money to the bank, and the bank pays us back on demand for that loan whenever we need it. And sometimes they do crazy stuff, and when they go bust, the government has to bail them out because we depend on them so much, because we give them all of our money, that we can't bear for them to go under. And so then, just to give everyone a little bit of confidence, we've got something called the FSCS protection up to £120,000 now. Before it used to be 85,000. That's gone up to £120,000, and that actually runs completely counter to what Rachel Reeves has just done here, right? Because that 120,000 gives the comfort to people to put money into bank accounts, including savings accounts, and she's trying to move the money from the banks into more productive work, which is a good thing. But this is like the way the way that they do their policy isn't consistent.
So would you say that needs to be looked at?
Absolutely. So I think that we should be winnowing that protection down over time to as little as possible, because it's we've got this guarantee thing that we have in place, which gives banks protection, but from an economic structure, we are giving so much power to the banks, and that's why they even need the guarantee in the first place, because there's so much risk sat there.
It's almost like you can't let it fail industry, isn't it? I mean, we saw that in the financial crisis back in 2008, 2009, where the government ended up owning all of the banks effectively. And that's what you get when you have that kind of system. You're relying so heavily on it. I mean, you see it at the moment, there's a bank that's even remotely in trouble or not back doing well, all sorts of policies and things will start changing. Everything goes out the window. So
and they'll protect it to the hilt. Salman, talk to us a little bit more about what else is happening in the business world. So we've got, I'm just looking at the notes, we've got the custom duty relief for low value imports. So they've gone after Shein. And I don't know how you pronounce it. Is it Shein or Shein? Shein, whatever.
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest.
So they've gone after Shein, Ziad knows what it's all about. So for packages less than £135, which is I think pretty much all of their packages, they weren't paying anything, and now they have to pay something.
They have to pay customs duty now when they're sending stuff into the UK. So what this is meant to do is level the playing field with UK retailers and people based on the high street. Whether it works in practice or not, who knows? Those guys already sell stuff at dirt cheap levels anyway. How much is that going to impact them? Whatever the customs duties is, but that's kind of the gist of it behind it. One of the things we haven't talked about, Ibrahim, I know you probably were going to come into it, is the mansion tax.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I didn't talk about the mansion tax is because it only really affects people with houses above £2 million, isn't it? But for those people, it's not a good outlook.
No, it's not. I mean, it's the reason I kind of touched on it is we've seen this before. What I'm about to say, the limits are set quite high. The thresholds are quite high when the tax comes in. Over time, it will get lowered. We had this with there's a tax called the ATED charge, annual tax on dwellings. Basically, if you own a residential property in a company and you live in it, you'd have to pay. People used to use it to avoid stamp duty, land tax, but you have to pay an annual charge. When it came in, it had a similar threshold.
Oh.
Now it's lowered to $500,000. So while who knows? I mean, this is a whole new thing that's coming in, so it's going to need new systems and all of that to be implemented. And it's not coming in anytime soon. There's a good couple of years left yet. But I think it's one to keep an eye on.
Okay, interesting. So I want to talk a little bit about the final thing I want to talk about before we start looking at Q&A is they've reduced the business rates for £750,000 retail, hospitality or leisure properties, which I think is a good thing, actually, particularly for our pharmacies, I guess. But it's been funded by an increase in business rates by properties with rateable values above 500,000 and above.
Yeah. So I think Rachel Reeve said something along the lines of, so we're giving this relief, and there's from what I read in the budget, there's a lot of packages of relief that will go with it. But her justification was we're now going to tax those big warehouses owned by these online giants and whatnot. I mean, that's not the only reality. Obviously, there will be other businesses who own properties of that value, but that was a political spin on it. But it does seem like they've kind of tempered the impact of that by bringing in some of these reliefs and packages, details to be seen, I suppose.
Fantastic. Okay, so Salman, we're now going to be watching ourselves. Let me just play this. Keep it on mute, and let's have a look at some of the Q&A that we're seeing in the chat. So Imad is asking about the Innovative Finance ISA. Will that be impacted by the allowance change? So the Innovative Finance ISA isn't a cash ISA, so we don't believe it will be affected at all, which I think is a positive thing. Okay, let's see. So Finance Adil is saying, what's astonishing is when Conservative froze tax thresholds, Rachel Reeves accused them of picking the pockets of the working people. Yeah.
She acknowledged that, to be fair to her. In her speech, she did, from what I could tell anyway.
What did she say?
She did say, look, I did make a whole song and a dance about it last year, and I appreciate I'm going back on it by keeping the freeze.
Yeah.
But it's a needs must kind of thing. They'll always have a justification.
Of course they do. And Shabana Mahmood was campaigning for the rights of all migrants a few years ago, and now she's the one who's, she's trying to break the boats.
It's the way the cookie crumbles, right?
I know. How sustainable do you guys think the state pension is, given how it keeps increasing and also our aging population?
I think we were talking about it earlier, weren't we? I think it is, again, not an economist, but it's there's a lot of things going on in society right now that look like they're unsustainable, and that's just one part of it. I think in terms of, I was listening to some really interesting discussions, again in preparation for this, and just generally when I was driving on a few popular radio stations and around the two child benefit cap, the state pension, the social contract, how we as a society seem to be kind of breaking down in this country in terms of who's doing what for who.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of those kind of things that are happening right now in the welfare state that are looking like they're not sustainable long term unless there's some drastic changes.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we need to, rather than, because I feel like they're always tinkering at the edges, they're not actually just really thinking first principles. What does this country need?
Yeah.
And we need to think about spending on infrastructure, right? No. We need to think about, like, we can't change where we are going to be quickly, but we need to think about what will need to be changed in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years. And it all really starts with, things like the skills and, the kind of skill sets that we're creating in this country, playing to our strengths with financial services or other professional services, playing to our strengths with, some of the biggest cities that we have. Why is it that London is the main city? Why are we not really investing in some of the other cities, investing in national infrastructure? Like, why is it that, we've got terrible road network, trains that don't run on time? Why is it that it takes so long for us to go from London to Birmingham to Manchester? I could go on, but I feel like that's what we should be investing in.
I think the problem with that, Ibrahim, is that that's going to take a huge amount of political capital for someone to go in and make those sort of changes. And I think we sort of touched on Labour's approach to lots of things, but I think it kind of missed the boat a little bit, because when it came in, it had a lot of that. It could have done a lot more, because it came with
huge mandate.
Huge mandate. Now it's kind of almost lost that, if you look at the opinion polls. So we need stronger leadership in that regard. That's what's going to fix that, because it's going to come with pain. It's going to come with short and maybe medium, maybe even longer term pain. But I don't see that currently in our political sort of environment, that someone's going to step up and take that challenge.
Yeah. No, and I think, unfortunately, the way our political system is, it perhaps doesn't even reward someone for having that kind of mindset, because it's the easiest thing in the world to cut taxes and give freebies to people who vote for you, and to try and put the burden on the other side, and that keeps you in power for 5 years. This is short-termism, but really, for this country to succeed, for any country to succeed, we need to have a long-term mindset. And I just feel like we've just been living short-term for too long, and we've ended up in this mess.
Yeah, I think everyone's just trying to survive, aren't they, in terms of their political careers in the next step. I mean, we had the absurd situation where number 10 was briefing against the health secretary in terms of him taking over and then being apologized for. So, when you get into that, that's just one example. Everyone's just trying to protect their next sort of 4 years, 5 years, instead of really, from where I say, and what you just said, seeing what's good for the country and trying to put that in place. It's just not happening.
And we're still, we're still somehow able to cough up money, for the defense sector, for Ukraine, for overseas, wars, and at the same time we're unable to, and then we're unable to find the money to do the things that we need, and then we need to go and tax, the working, people of the world.
That's, those two things are so opposing, right? We don't have money, yet we're giving money away to these foreign causes and whatnot, where we're not looking after our own in this country, which it beggars belief when you see that.
So on that, we have a question from MMUZ6879, which is, what's the government plan for growth? MMUZ, I think the government plan for growth is as clear as mud. And I think from this conversation that we've just had, you've probably gathered that
we're not sure what it is.
Yeah, we're not sure what it is, and the government, for sure as mud, isn't sure what it is either. So there is no plan. And
I mean, their plan is taking £150 off energy bills, and that will bring down inflation, apparently.
Oh,
that's the top headline. If you look at the exec summary of the budget, that's the first thing.
To be fair, what they have done will bring down inflation, because like if you take the economy and give it a massive slap, it will bring down inflation.
Yeah, I mean, take money off people, they can't spend it.
Exactly, it's true. So that's the government plan for growth, MMUZ6879, which is we're not really sure. Mahroof Hussain 8044. Do you think taxes will go up again next year? It's a good question. So I think, and it's sad, I don't think we should think about it economically. Partly economically, maybe, but I think we should think about it politically. Because what ends up happening is they try and front load the pain. And this was really the last year where they could have front loaded that pain. So I think from now on, we're going to see, sunshine. So by the next election, there's going to be a whole bunch of freebies that are being given away at the next election. And that's coming in 2029. So 2027, I think is going to be a bit of 50-50, not very much. 2028 is when the freebies are going to start. And then 2029 is when we're going to have Black Friday sales.
Well, interestingly, current forecast, that's when we're going to be in a surplus.
Are we?
So so all of these measures are raising all of these taxes. Doesn't mean we're not going to be in a deficit in the budget. From what I've been reading, it means by 2029, 30 or just after is when we will finally be in a surplus position. So there may well be a bit more short-term pain if the economy doesn't grow like they're expecting it to grow, and there's still this black hole.
Do you think we're going to get there? Do you think we're going to get to surplus?
if the economy has to pick up for that. I don't think. I think as it stands, it doesn't look likely that's happening anytime soon.
Yeah.
Because that was supposed to have happened already, and it hasn't happened. So, yeah.
You don't believe our politicians, Salman?
Might come as a shocker to people, but I don't think I do.
I'm really disappointed. I've always believed them. They've been so honest to us. All right, so what have we got? So Finance Adil, what do you think of other parties' economic policies, e.g. the Green Party and our favorite, the Reform Party? So I confess, I don't necessarily know the ins and outs.
I was just going to ask the same question.
Yeah.
What are the policies?
For the Green Party and the Reform Party, but my general sense of the Green Party is, you've got quite a left-leaning agenda, shall we say, that's very, focused on tackling climate change as a key plank, but also, generally, equaling up society a bit more. That's as far as my general gist of what the Green Party stands for. And then Reform, heaven only knows what they stand for, but I suspect that they're right of the Tories on a lot of things.
Yeah, I think it's just they're probably, it's the party line around or on the right or anything on that conservative spectrum, isn't it? It's tax less and all that sort of stuff, help business. But I don't really know what their policies are.
Yeah, perhaps we should dig into that. Maybe that's a live stream or an episode for another day. Good question, Finance Adil. Who do you think will win the next election? That's a good question.
I was going to say it's the best of a pretty bad bunch, but it's probably the bad of a pretty bad bunch, really. I don't really know right now.
All right, I've broken into your house, put your gun to your head, and I've said, all right, I need you to give me an answer, otherwise I'm going to shoot. No. Who are you going to say?
I think I'd say stick with Labour for now.
Oh, really? Interesting.
I don't really see anything of substance from the other parties.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying who you're going to vote for. Is that what you're going to vote for, Labour?
I would say that they're the best of the bad bunch at the moment in terms of keeping them in power, probably.
Yeah.
I'm not really much of a, I probably shouldn't have been this much of a voter.
So
I don't like any of them.
We've got Labour, we've got Reform, and then we've got, I guess the Tories are just down and out. They're nowhere to be seen.
Do you think Reform's, given what our political system is like and how Parliament works, do you really think they'll get that many MPs to even get close to government?
I think so. I think that it's extremely hard in our political system to have a third party break through.
Yeah.
But when it breaks through suddenly, and you suddenly have a new political party. So when that shift happened in the early 1900s with what was then the Liberals, right? So, and then you have the Labour Party come through. I think we're going to see that in 2029. Okay. Is my instinct.
Interesting. Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, I think it remains to be seen. I think it's going to be difficult for anyone else. I think what it'll probably mean both Labour and Conservative take hits, but I personally feel like they're probably still going to be a big part. Because if you look at all the popularity that the Lib Dems had back in the early 2010s and didn't get anywhere near big enough to form government.
Yeah. So my instinct is that I'm going to make some big, bold bets. I think we're going to have a hung parliament where we're going to have to see some kind of coalition government. And I think that coalition government is going to be the Labour Party, Lib Dems, Green, and the independents are going to chuck their hat in as well. Yeah. Your party, someone is asking about your party, I don't think is going to...
They're not dissolved yet?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to exist. I think it's going to be... I think it's a bit of a joke. So I don't think that's going to happen. So we're going to have these kind of people and maybe what they call Plaid Cymru. All of these guys are going to come together into a big coalition. And on the other side, you've got Reform and you've got the Tories. And I think they'll be close, but they won't be enough for a majority. And then I think we should try and get proportional representation and just change this entire political system around.
That would be something.
I don't think it's going to happen.
No.
And then we should get rid of Brexit, reverse Brexit as well.
Apparently, what we're paying for right now with all of these taxes and stuff is if we reverse Brexit, I think that's like, I read somewhere it's like £100 billion a year impact.
Positive.
it would have. It's now currently a negative one. That's what we lost. So imagine that. We'd be in a surplus right now. I mean, obviously, not everything is, you're going to look at things.
That's all because of the man who was trying to be a nice racist.
Yeah.
He didn't do it out of
I mean, the NHS now has £350 million a week or something extra, right?
Apparently.
Yeah.
No one's seeing it, but it's there.
I was talking to a doctor recently, a friend of mine bumped into, and he was telling me how hard it is for doctors to actually get jobs and stuff in the NHS right now.
Yeah.
It's a bad market. There's a lot of them going unemployed.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I went to the A&E. I had to wait there for 6 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. It's crazy. It was it's not a good look. All right, let's pick up a few more questions and then we should probably wrap up. Do you think taxing the super wealthy is the answer for inequality? Muz6879. I'm going to give you my thoughts. Interested to hear your thoughts.
Taxing the super wealthy.
My thought is that we probably shouldn't. Like, my instinct is, taxing is. My instinct is that you should be looking to finance as much as you can and financing engines for growth, right? And because then the debt pays for itself. So rather than taxing people, which is slap in the face of whoever it is, and if you're slapping in the face the wrong kind of person, then they'll leave this country and they'll not work hard for this country. So if in doubt, I would lean towards finance, but finance that kind of covers itself. Is how I would think about it. What do you think?
I'm not a great fan of this progressive tax system overall that we have. I think just principally it's if you have more wealth, you should pay more, but you already are paying more by default by having more money and earning more money. Your 20% of 100K is more than 20% of 20K. Clearly, proportionally, should they pay more? Okay, that's what we've got, but should they keep paying more and more and more? I'm not entirely sure. I think everybody needs to kind of take the burden equally.
Yeah.
And they do pay more.
Yeah.
Ultimately, they do pay more. In real, whichever way you look at it. I think, again, there's another stat that the top 1% of the wealthiest in this country pay 30% of the taxes that are collected. So they're really paying a lot more. So if we keep doing what you just said, if you keep taxing them more, it's going to drive them away. It's not what we need. We need them to stay and spend more, do more, create more jobs, take those risks that are rewarded. We've had changes to the non-domicile regime in the last few years. We're bringing people coming into the UK now. Their worldwide assets are now in tax charges in the UK for even
entrepreneurs relief. We got rid of that.
We're putting caps on that. Putting caps on even business property relief and agricultural property. And everywhere you look, there's more and more taxation. It's more and more complex, and it is targeted at the wealthiest, but it's counterproductive.
Salman, if you were standing as an MP, I would vote for you.
Not sure that's going to happen anytime soon, to be honest.
We need a conservative party, but with the heart of what used to be the Labour Party.
This is a kind of proper tangent, but I've had this conversation with others. If you take ideologically as Muslims, the Conservative Party isn't too far off in a lot of aspects.
Yeah.
But when you take the other things into consideration, you can't vote for them. You look at it and you go, I can't vote for anyone right now when you look at it like that. So we do. I think you're right. I think if we had that and we could have those sort of policies again and looking after everyone, that would be what we need. I think it does feel like that. Maybe I'm going over the top here, but it does feel like society's crumbling right now.
So, just on that slightly not so positive note, we should wrap up. But I want one final thought from you, and then I'll give one final thought myself.
I think the final thought is, if you're an investor, if you're a business owner, take stock, look at how you're doing things, where you're doing. There's a lot of changes we've not even touched on. There's things like allowances on plant and machinery and not plant and machinery that have been they've made changes to that. There's more changes coming. So educate yourself on what's happened, what's going to happen, how that's impacting you. take advice where you need it and be clever with your money and what you're doing with it.
That's, I think, really wise words. I think I would echo all of that. And I would just add that, you know, we as Muslims are supposed to be as optimistic as possible. And this is one of the largest economies in the world still. There's a huge amount of wealth in this country still, and economies are cyclical. And right now, you know, the reality is, sure, a whole bunch of changes have happened and we might sound slightly negative, but actually, you know, the markets have reacted and they've kind of held steady, because it's kind of all in all, I suspect it's going to, you know, net out roughly the same. But hopefully we see the tide shifting over the next few years, hopefully as a result of some of these changes and general macroeconomic trends, and this country, you know, starts climbing again. And it is always darkest before the dawn. Until next time. Assalamu alaikum.